Welcome to this edition of the Talk of Simsbury. My name is Dominique Avery. If you saw the photos in the opening of the show, you've probably figured out that the talk this month is about Simsbury's Adventure Triathlon, now in its 5th year. My guests today are Andrea Bono, who's the new race director this year, Tom Roy, Simsbury's Public Works Director, who himself is an enthusiastic bike rider, and Patty Smith-Jacobus, who is also an extremely enthusiastic biker and with the Simsbury Free Bike, and also you're the chair of the Simsbury Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, which is always a mouthful. Right. Thank you all for coming and giving us a chance to get to know more about the triathlon. Andrea, since you're the new race director, I'm fascinated to learn what kind of background one needs to be a race director. And so tell me a little bit more about yourself.
Well, I've been a triathlete for over 20 years now. Actually, maybe even longer than that, forget the date. So I've always been involved and enthusiastic with triathlons and races and running. So it starts with the love of the field first. And then it got to the point where I just felt like I wanted to be more involved other than an athlete. So through volunteering at different races with other race directors and learning the field, I moved forward and got a certification and training in race directing. And then it was all hands-on from there. It's always a learning experience, but it's a good learning experience.
So let me ask the two of you, how did you find Andrea? Did you run the triathlon here?
This is my first year here at Tri Simsbury. It's the 5th year running. I've known Tom for a long time. He and I used to participate in a local triathlon series in Farmington, which later I became the race director there.
So you knew Andrea?
It's a small little community.
But growing.
Growing quickly.
So this is, Patty, anybody who wants to answer, jump in. We want to inform people. This is the 5th year of the triathlon, as we've mentioned. It's always run on a Saturday in May, as I recall. When is it this year? Patty, you want to?
It's going to be on May 20th. 11 o'clock in the morning is when we shoot the gun off and start things off. It's run exclusively by volunteers, so it's a local event. And it started years ago by the Economic Development Commission, who wanted to really demonstrate to people how wonderful Simsbury was in terms of its assets, the Farmington River, our beautiful land, and our extremely wonderful bike trails. The Farmington Canal Heritage Trail runs right through Simsbury. So that's an important part of the whole event.
Tom, have you been involved since the beginning?
I have been involved since the beginning, and it was interesting, being an employee of the town, but also doing a lot of triathlons myself, and sitting down with a group of volunteers where a number of them had never been involved in the triathlon and trying to work out some of the logistics that we were going to have from putting on a race like this. And as Patty said, we really wanted to highlight some of what Simsbury has to offer. The one interesting twist to this triathlon, instead of as a traditional triathlon would have swimming, this has kayaking. Which certainly does make it a little bit easier for those of us who don't like swimming. I can tell you, when I first started doing triathlons, that was absolutely what terrified me. Since then, I've become a pretty good swimmer, but it makes it a lot easier, I think, for new people who have not been experienced triathletes to give it a try. I know in the past we've been able to coordinate rental kayaks with some of our local vendors. And really, it's been set up to be a fun family event, something, again, that would benefit both experienced triathletes and people just looking to give it a try.
So have you done it each of the 5 years?
I have either volunteered or participated in the race each of the 5 years.
So you haven't done it all 5 years?
I have not raced it all 5 years. And in fact, some ways it's funny because being a volunteer I get very anxious. I'd rather be racing. It's a better position to be in for me. But it's been very beneficial being a town employee and being able to have access to some of the resources that we need on race day, and to help out the race director in making sure things go smoothly for all the athletes.
And like you mentioned, it is, as far as the kayaking and not swimming, which does scare off a lot of people, but it's also a nice family event because you can have that kayak portion. So for kids who aren't comfortable in the water, even some adults who aren't comfortable, or newbies, it's a great way to introduce them to it. And also, we also welcome teams. So one person can kayak, one person can bike, and one person can run.
So there's something you didn't mention. You hold the race in May.
Correct.
If it had swimming, nobody would participate.
Well, that was, I didn't want to say that, but it could be a possibility.
So you've talked about teams and families. So tell me a little bit how families participate or how teams get formed and how that works. So people have various strengths and do a piece of it, or
Correct.
describe how that works.
Yes, normally if you put together a team, you would find the stronger person in that component of the race. And that's usually how the teams form, but it's not always that way. Sometimes parents want to get their children involved and they don't feel comfortable with them on the bike, so they may want to team with them and have one of them run and one of them kayak. And then, I mean, generally that's how the teams would form together. I mean,
I think it can look a lot of different ways. I mean, last year I knew a few people who ran it as a team, and it was simply so that they could swap off every other event. You know, the run, in this one, the run is first, then the bike, then the kayak, and then there's one last little run getting back from the crew boat house right back to the Performing Arts Center. And I joke and smile because it's a half mile, but boy, it feels a lot longer.
That last
little
At
to
the
the finish.
At the end of the day, yep.
So are there going to be, when I looked at the website, it said new and improved. I'm not sure whether that's changed this year or whether that's been in past years. I know that the first year you had a course through State Park, and it was sort of uphill and difficult, and I remember afterwards that some people had broke things and had a few injuries, and what I heard was that there were some complaints about either from the participants or from the park people, I'm not sure. So you moved it. So could somebody tell me a little bit about the history there?
Well, I believe it was the first 2 years that the race took place, where it started essentially on Riverside and it ran up into Penwood and right up the ridge, and it was a very challenging course in terms of, you know, athletes running it. There are a lot of athletes that's what they're looking for in a race. They want that challenge, and they're looking for, you know, an interesting and challenging course. There was one injury. A woman did fall and injured her arm, and I was impressed. She still finished the running component, and I think she was part of a team, so her team ended up finishing, which is pretty impressive. The last couple years, we've run it down in the meadows. So you're actually starting at the Performing Arts Center. There is what we could call a parade lap, where you're actually running around the perimeter of that facility. And again, that makes it very nice for families, so you can see your whoever you're cheering on that day run. And if you're one of the people running, you know that your kids and family are watching you, and you can't exactly go slow through there. And then it takes you back in through the meadows, where you're running off-road, you know, and it's really a beautiful area back there. And it's about a 5K. And then you come out over by the crew boat house. That's where you would pick up your bike in transition. It's an important part of the triathlon, is you got to get out of your sneakers and into your running shoes and get your helmet on as fast as you can. You essentially from there go up to the bike trail on Iron Horse Boulevard. Brings you all the way out to 315. 315, you then come back over through Terry's Plain, and you end up circling back along from Terry's Plain to East Weetog Street down to Riverside, and that's one lap, and you essentially do two laps, so it's 12 miles. Then you get to get in your kayak. And the kayaks are launching from the Betty Hudson property, now that the town's acquired that.
Did they do that last year too?
They did that last year. So as you get off your bike, you get to run across the street. The police were there to make sure that was done safely. And the Boy Scouts were over there making sure that everybody's kayaks were ready for them. The Boy Scouts were actually carrying the kayaks down to the river for you for the launch. It was great. So if you were smart and as you were running over there, you know, you would yell out your number and they'd have your kayak ready, and it was, you know, first class service. You would go down river to start off, turn around at a buoy, and then come back, and you finish at the crew boat house, where again we had the scouts helped you get up onto the dock, get out, and then you had that last little bit of a run right
And
back
it's
to.
a 2-mile kayak. It's a mile down and a mile back.
It was far.
So yeah, that's what I heard.
But
And I heard the river was running pretty fast last year, so it was challenging to get up the river.
It was-
and that it was pushing people back. But
as somebody who normally does triathlons that involve swimming, the kayaking was interesting, and in a way it was fun because at that point in the race you're hot and you're sitting on the water, so a little splashing certainly felt good, and then you had people on the Flower Bridge cheering you on, so you never felt like you were out in the middle of nowhere. You really got to see some different points within Simsbury, and you're definitely within a team atmosphere.
So now, because the race, your own 2 feet, your bike, and a kayak, does that eliminate people who don't have kayaks? How do you handle that?
no, like Tom had mentioned earlier, we do work with local facilities, and you can rent a kayak through, and the
So how
kayak
does
will
that
be
work?
here. All the information will be on our website where you can rent from. Right now, we have Collinsville Canoe and Kayak.
So you
renting
rent
out.
from them?
Yeah, and they will bring the
they bring them-
kayaks here.
and then
they'll
take
have
them
it-
back
And
again?
they'll take them back, yep.
I have seen, though, after the race, I have seen people parked outside of Plan B with their own kayaks.
Oh, yeah.
There are people who come. And does everybody use their own bike?
Normally, yes.
That's pretty personal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is. And you mentioned that you see kayaks outside of the restaurants after the race. That's another big reason for us to have people coming to this event. We have some wonderful downtown eateries, and there's a lot to do and see in Simsbury, either before or after the race. So we love it when people bring their equipment and spend some time here after as well. And race pickup day is usually the day before, so that's another reason to come to town, see what the town's all about, maybe take a ride, maybe do a trial bike loop or 2, just to get a feel for the course, and then stop at one of the local restaurants.
So that leads into my favorite subject, which is I believe Simsbury needs a campgrounds for people, to encourage people who want to bike and use our trails and the water to stay overnight without having to stay at an expensive hotel. We don't really have anything like that.
And a
So-
lot of that is being done around the country. Those small campsites are popping up trailside or a little off the trail because so many people now are doing these wonderful bike trips where they just kind of pack a very light pack of clothes and whatnot, and they're looking for those kinds of places, a small campground where a family of 2 or 3 or 4 can spend the night and not have to break the bank.
So my next project is organizing a group of people to organize a campground. So you're going to be on the committee, and you're going to be on the committee, and Andrea, you'll be on the committee.
I'd love to help out.
No, it's absolutely essential. I'm on the tourism committee for the
We've
people in
seen
the
some
audience.
wonderful things that have been done around the country, so we'd love to help you out.
So you mentioned that people can get more information about how to rent a canoe on the website. Talk a little bit about what's on the website and what people can find there.
So our website is designed very nice. I like it. It does show our sponsorships, and as new sponsorships come in, it will be posted on there. It's very user friendly. On there, you can find out the history of the race. You could see you could take tours. And the maps are on there of the course. There's a gallery of pictures on there, and you can register right from there.
We'd also invite people to come and visit our Facebook page. We have an
Yes.
Instagram account and also a Facebook page, Simsbury Triathlon, Try Simsbury Triathlon. And we do try to put a lot of new information up there about our sponsors, but also about training and different things. We post a picture of the course, the running course, and also the bike course, so that if people want a copy of the cue sheet ahead of time, they can pick it up from either the website or from the Facebook page. And then after the race, you're likely to see your face there.
So I'd like to talk, Tom, you touched on this a little bit earlier about the logistics of the race. So you were involved in the beginning. I want to know a little bit. It seems to me like an extraordinarily complicated thing to plan. You were involved. Describe to me how you worked it all out. I mean, you just described, it's easy, we're doing this, but it couldn't have been easy.
It's easy because it's all done. And actually the first year I think we got to give a lot of credit. Linda Schofield was, I think, really one of the drivers behind it, and she got together a great team of volunteers, and there was a lot of energy and a lot of effort, and everybody was putting forward kind of their best ideas. We did end up hiring a race director because, again, it's what a race director does is to understand what the logistics. Okay, if it's a 5K race, the first person to get to transition is going to be there in 16 minutes. The last person is going to be there in 45 minutes. They know these numbers. They know the statistics. And through years of experience, that's where they start to drill down on how to get things done. And then the other key component is making sure that the volunteers understand their responsibilities. I can tell you it's very rare that it's happened, but during a race, the worst thing that can happen as an athlete is to be given the wrong direction. Somebody tells you, turn here or don't turn here, and you miss a turn. And these are the things that, we've always been fortunate to have a well-run race, and making sure that it starts with the volunteers. They need to know what their job is, and we actually have job descriptions for the volunteers, so they understand if you're manning transition, this is where you're directing the runners to go to. These are the instructions you're giving them. Make sure their helmet is on, make sure their helmet is buckled, make sure that they get on the bike at the appropriate location, and it's all for safety. And I think we've also been very fortunate. We've worked very closely with our police officers and making sure that the course is set up in a way that's safe. The one thing that is unique is on the bike course with triathlons, and it's, the bike course is open to cars. So you still have to use the appropriate safety precautions as a cyclist. You have to stay to the right. Cars may pass you. So there's a lot of logistics, and it's really, it sounds easy now, like you said, but it was a lot of meetings and a lot of hard work.
I'm sure. So how many volunteers are involved? It sounds like a lot.
I don't know last year's number. I couldn't find that information.
I would say we were somewhere in the neighborhood of 30. And a lot of it, Brad.
Does that count the Boy Scouts?
It may not count all of the Boy Scouts, no.
Sounds to me like there are a lot.
I was going to say, myself, though, as the director this year, I would feel very comfortable having at least 30 to 40 people. I mean, it just, like Tom mentioned, you have to station volunteers everywhere.
And how are you reaching out to people to get the volunteers?
We're reaching out to past volunteers to start there. And then people are kind enough, they want to get involved and they want to help out and they approach you.
And how do they reach you?
We could be reached once again through our website. There's contact information on there.
So they can send an email that way and you'll respond.
Or they could contact through the Facebook page message.
Through social media.
Okay.
And Simsbury Free Bike and all of the volunteers that we recruit, we handle the bike course. These are people that understand cycling, understand the dangers of cycling, understand what good etiquette is on the bike trail, and we're very fortunate to have a lot of those volunteers returning every year, so we feel really good about the quality of the volunteers that we have managing cyclists as they come through at a pretty fast clip.
So those are people who love the idea of the triathlon,
Yes.
but don't really want to do it themselves, like you sometimes. Right.
Or sometimes you just want to be more involved in your sport.
So where is the best place if there are people who don't want to volunteer and who don't want to participate but want to watch? Where are the best places? You mentioned...
I would probably say the best place is probably over by the Flower Bridge. Because from there, you can walk over towards the crew boathouse and see the runners as they finish and come through the transition area. You'll also be able to see the cyclists as they're coming through Drake Hill on their 2 loops. You'll then be able to see the kayak portion, both as they're launching and as they're coming back. So I think that's probably almost, that's a great location. And then, of course, you could be at the Performing Arts Center to see either the beginning or the end.
Right.
And again, it's all close enough that you could easily walk between these different venues. Last year, I know there was several people on bikes so that they would bike from different points to watch.
I was going to ask, just if people come by car, where do you suggest they park? On Iron Horse?
Along Iron Horse, you bet.
And then walk to the Flower Bridge?
Right.
So I saw that you train people, right, for triathlons?
Yes.
So let's say we have some people who are watching who think, or have a family member, or who are thinking themselves that maybe they should do it this year. What would you advise them to do?
Well, I would advise to get started now. We are at the beginning of March. If they want to really be involved in triathlons themselves, I suggest if they're not a strong swimmer or a good swimmer, they start with taking swim classes or hiring a swimming coach. To start slowly, depending on I don't know, their level of conditioning. But to get to the gym, to go on stationary bikes, take spin classes is a good start. And then running is just a discipline of its own as well. We've had some beautiful days. You can come out here to Simsbury if they wanted to and go along the bike path, the trails there. But, again, depending on where you are in your level of performance, it's hard to just give a general plan, but it's just start building, and then trying to put different components together. Don't just separate the swim, the bike, the run. Eventually, since in the triathlon you swim, bike, run, you want to learn to maybe swim and then go get on your bike, or take a bike ride and then take a small jog afterwards to get the feel for it, because it does feel different.
So kayaking is a little harder to prepare for, especially so much of this winter. It was,
Yeah,
the
for the
river was
kayaking,
actually frozen.
Yeah, I would say for kayaking, I would get into your local gym and start maybe rowing on the row machine.
So do you also advise people on nutrition?
Yes, I do, yeah. But again, that's very individualized. But it is important to remember, even in the winter time, people don't feel thirsty. It is important to remember to hydrate. Even when you're in the pool swimming, people tend to ignore that.
So I was wondering, I know nothing about this sport at all, and I didn't
It's
even...
okay, I know a coach for you.
Are you kidding me? I can't even bike anymore. I'm from New York. I didn't learn to drive a car until I was in my 20s, and I didn't learn to bike until I was like 16 years old or something. I am not athletic. How does this compare to other triathlons in the state, and are there other kayak triathlons in the United States?
I'm not aware of. There are different type of adventure races, so there could be something very similar to this in the United States. I don't believe there's another one in the state of Connecticut.
I don't think in Connecticut, but I think when we were doing some of our initial research, we did run into some other very creative formats, and they were very similar to this.
Yes.
But also we want to remind people that Simsbury is the only silver level bicycle friendly community in the state of Connecticut. So another reason to get out and try our trails and try the route that the triathlon has put together for this race. Some really wonderful hiking, biking, riding venues here.
That's the one thing I noticed about this town. It is a very active community, which draws me to keep coming back more and more. I don't live in town, but every time I do pull up into town, I
Physically
enjoy
active
it.
and also active as far as volunteers
Yes.
and getting involved in their community.
Well, I have to say the committee that I am working with on this race, they're amazing and they're very involved. And just even going to the town hall to get permits and everything, the whole town is very excited about this race.
Right.
And
So you're from out of town. Do you find that there's a difference between Farmington and Simsbury in terms of sort of esprit de corps of the town, Tom?
Well, it's funny because I spend so much time here. I always enjoy seeing, along Iron Horse, even in the wintertime, you have people walking, you have people running, and it really, in some ways, we've talked that the trail, in some ways, has become the new town center. That's where you go to meet some of your neighbors and chat, and in the meantime, you also hopefully get a little exercise in as well.
It used to be the town dump.
And I was amazed to
Farmington
see
it was.
what a dog-friendly community this is. And I think that's important for people to know as well. I bring my puppy over to the dog park as often as I can. But
There are a lot of people in Simsbury who don't even know that there's a dog park yet, but there is a dog park here.
yeah.
So how many people come do this, if you have statistics on this, from Simsbury and from out of Simsbury, and how far do people come to do this? Do you know?
Well, we have people coming from out of state, and I haven't looked at the statistics, so I can't tell you. But I would imagine it's probably a 50-50, 50% from in town and 50% from out of Simsbury.
Yeah, I was going to say, my guess was a little bit lower. I was thinking probably like 30 to 35% Simsbury, and then there's a lot from Avon, Farmington,
Well,
and
I'm thinking
surrounding
Farmington
towns.
Valley.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. So initially, Mark Deming and Linda Schofield's idea was to show off the town's
Right.
assets, and that seems to have worked.
Yeah, and our businesses have been just fabulous as far as support. We've had a lot of businesses come forward, and year after year, they continue to support the initiative, understanding that it really does bring a lot of folks to town.
Well, I can swear to that by driving around afterwards and seeing the kayaks on top of people's cars. So before we have to end, maybe each one of you just give me a little elevator speech for the public about why they should get involved, or either as a participant or as a volunteer or as a spectator?
Well, as a participant, definitely, just because starts off the season, the triathlon and race season, which is nice, just to get yourself out there and get yourself used to being in the sport. And not only that, because of the uniqueness of it being a kayak, a bike, then a run. I mean, a run, I'm sorry, a run, a bike, then a kayak, which is just unusual. And just maybe give yourself that challenge. A volunteer, you don't have to be an athlete to volunteer. You could just be, you could just be curious about what this race is about, or you just want to see how, what type of athletes come, or you just want to people just like to volunteer just to get involved. I'm excited, just over that we have the Performing Arts Center, which is a big part of this, where the start and the run and the finish end. And it would be nice, I think people would just, who want to come in and just spectate, just to get to see the feel of the Arts Center there, and to experience the Flower Bridge, which I didn't until recently. It's beautiful.
But there are no flowers there.
There weren't any
flowers. There will be no
flowers
until after the race, because they would get
I didn't even know that existed, and I was happy to find it. Yeah, and then, like you said, then just to stay afterwards, after town, I'd love to come here and dine and eat, or go for ice cream. I mean, I just discovered Popovers, and I think that place is great. So,
Tom, are you running this year, or are you just going to be there?
Well, it's funny because with Andrew's first year, I was kind of probably going to volunteer just to make sure that I'm there in case anything pops up. But, like I said, if I'm not running in the race, I definitely miss running in the race. And like Andrew said, it can easily be your first big race of the year. It's a fun course just because it's a different and unique distance. It's in terms of the time it takes to complete, it's not the largest effort, but at the end of the day, you're tired and you know you've done something to be proud of.
And you'll sleep well.
You will certainly sleep well. Dare I say, the food will taste better. The beer might even taste better than that. So.
Okay, so we have just about run out of time. Just give the address one more time, Patty.
The address for our website
Yep.
is trysimsbury.com. We also have a Facebook page, Try Simsbury, and an Instagram account. Please, if you're interested in volunteering, give us a call. We have something for everyone to do. There's always room for another volunteer.
Okay, that's it.
Thank you for having us.
I want to thank all of you, Patty Smith-Jacobus, Tom Roy, and Andrea Bono, and good luck to you for the race and all the participants. And I want to thank the folks here at SCTV for getting this show on the air. Special thanks to our volunteer remote cameraman, Sam Davidson, and finally, thank you for joining us. If you missed any portion of this show, you can always find it on our website at simsburytv.org. Just a reminder, SCTV is now available on some new Comcast channels. Public Channel 5 is also on Channel 1084. Channel 96 also appears on, I think, 1090, and Channel 95 can be found on 1070. And we're also happy to announce that Frontier has made some changes they've dropped their unwieldy Channel 99 in favor of individual local public access channels. You can now see SCTV's public channel on 6069, our education channel on 6070, and our government channel, where you can watch Tom Roy present his budget, on 6071. I'm Dominique Avery. See you next time for the Talk of Simsbury.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.